Hello and welcome to Know Your Representative, the program that bridges the visible gap between lawmakers and their constituents. I am Mariah.NASS. Today on the show, we'll take a look at the National Assembly Leadership Retreat that was organized by NILDS at Ikotekpene, Akwa Ibom State. That's the home state of the President of the Senate. The retreat was a time for the leadership of the House to see how they can move both the institution and Nigeria forward for the benefit of their constituents. We'll take a short break and I'll be back soon. Stay with us. The task of the leaders is to get their people from where they are to where they've not been. How do we hold our leaders accountable in the business of lawmaking and representation?
The mandate that you have given to us is not abuse in any way.
The primary purpose of government is to ensure the welfare and security of the Nigerian people.
Constituency projects had noble intentions and they still remain the most veritable tool.
Do they really know their representatives at the states and national assemblies?
Our people, they don't have water, they are suffering. They only drink water from where rain fall.
For the current one, the 10th assembly, I don't really know who is in charge.
From the mountaintops to the deepest valleys, we're ready to go an extra mile just to show Nigerian your constituency project. Know your representative with Maria, bridging the visible gap. The leadership of the National Assembly arrived at Akwa Ibom State for a retreat organized by the National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies, NILDS, as a retooling opportunity for the new leadership of the 10th National Assembly. The President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, who was a two-term governor of the state, and House of Representatives Speaker, Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, led leaders of the federal legislature to the retreat. On Friday, the 22nd of September 2023, the Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, declared open the retreat organized for the leadership of the 10th National Assembly in Ikotekpene, Akwa Ibom State. The opening ceremony transitioned into the technical session, focusing on matters concerning enhancing legislative efficiency, as well as interrelations between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, among other key topics. The National Assembly Leadership Retreat, organized by NILDS, serves as a platform for the leaders of both chambers to exchange experiences, pinpoint strategic legislative priorities for the 10th National Assembly, and also deliberate on aligning their legislative agenda with the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's 8-point agenda and renewed hope mantra. The retreat also allows for open discussions on pivotal matters facing the National Assembly. The Director General of NILDS, Professor Abubakar Suleiman, speaks on the essence of the retreat.
This retreat is one of several strategies for fostering communication between the chambers and identifying common policy and legislative objectives you can collectively work towards. It is also an avenue to strengthen the legislative relationship between the two arms of government, both aided by serving of former legislatures. As such, Nigerians expect even greater accomplishment and landmark legislation for good governance than as witnessed in the 9th Assembly. You can build on the successes of the previous assemblies and continue some of the unfinished business, including finalizing work on some critical bills and revisiting some important legislation, including the PIA, the Electoral Act, and the Climate Change Act, among others. At this retreat, we have gathered some of the most experienced individuals in the field of legislative leadership, who will share their insights and experiences with participants. Through papers presented, an interactive session, you can explore best practices, innovative and the latest legislative tool that enhance your performance. Given that this is an in-house affair, I'm sure you will all actively participate in the session, exchange ideas, and engage in open and constructive dialogue. Let me reassure you that the Institute is at hand to provide the necessary intellectual and technical support to the National Assembly to succeed in its lawmaking, oversight, and representation functions.
Nigeria, and I know we all agree on that, is facing several challenges and needs reforms to live up to its potential to be the real giant of Africa, not only by sheer numbers only, but by thriving through excellence and leadership in the region. If the current challenges are not addressed properly, the situation in the future might become very grim for the youth and for the future of this grand nation. The new government understands this very well, and their proposed necessary reforms, as set out in the government's 3-year economic revival plan, cannot come to fruition if not put into law. This is where the National Assembly comes into play. And the 10th Assembly is faced with very complex tasks, but taking them on can change the fortunes of Nigeria for real. For this to happen, distinguished senators and honourable members need to put in the necessary work and face the changes with willpower and realism. The will is there, but it also needs to be put into practice. And this is when now the legislative agendas come into play. They need to be realistically drafted, split into specific targets, accompanied by a specific timeline. And the many tasks and necessary reforms can be achieved only through a strong and closely monitored legislative agenda.
This is a new Nigeria where national interest trumps partisan and primordial sentiments. The gesture of the leadership of the National Assembly and the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies in holding this retreat here, and the decision of the Vice President to personally attend underscore the pan-Nigerian disposition of the present national leadership under His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR. Permit me to thank His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, for his spirit of inclusivity and bipartisanship, by his invitation for me to be a part of his delegation to the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly, UNGA 78, in New York City, the United States of America. This is the reason I'm being represented by my deputy, distinguished Senator Akone Yaranyi. The presence of the Vice President also attests to the existing cordial relationship between the executive and the National Assembly, inspired by the Arise agenda, passionate dedication to agricultural revolution, rural development, infrastructural maintenance, security management, and educational advancement. This administration will continue to support the federal government's efforts at making life meaningful for the people, especially those residents in Akwa Ibom State.
In our relentless pursuit of a more perfect Nigerian union, we must elevate the importance of data in our decision-making processes. We must align with the principles of participatory democracy, which champion public engagement in our legislative endeavors. This engagement serves as the bedrock for harvesting needs analysis, results directly from the voices and the experiences of our fellow citizens. We must acknowledge that the raw material for our legislative work should emanate from the unbiased, data-driven input of the people we represent. The facts and data we collect through rigorous, numerous efforts towards this data collection needs assessment should not merely serve as statistics. They should not just be data recorded somewhere in a piece of paper. Rather, they should be the guiding light that illuminates the path to more effective legislative procedures and products. After all, we craft laws for the people, and it is only equitable that the people actively shape the society they envision. This call to action resonates profoundly with the principles of democracy, principles of transparency, accountability, credibility, and inclusivity. The pressing question that warrants our collective introspection is this: how many of these facts and data are rigorously processed and genuinely considered by the legislature, an institution vested with the power of the purse and significant authority over our nation's budget? Do we truly incorporate the needs and aspirations of the people when sculpting our national budget? Or do we leave this critical task to the discretion of the heads of MDAs, who may not always prioritize the greater good due to ignorance of facts and data from the people we represent?
Under the leadership of the Director General of the Institute, Professor Abubakar O. Suleiman, for organizing this retreat, and also commend the President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, for choosing the wonderful state of Akwa Ibom to be the venue of this retreat. It is a fact that there is no better time to conduct this retreat than now, as we are preparing to resume our legislative duties in the next few days after our first yearly vacation of the 10th National Assembly. It is of note that our committees that were constituted in both chambers of National Assembly just before we went on recess are going to start working full force as we resume next week. Thus, this retreat is going to help the leadership of the both chambers of the National Assembly to be better equipped with the knowledge, skills, and other legislative leadership attributes to successfully lead the 10th Senate, the 10th National Assembly towards achieving the best legislative performance. It is my hope that this retreat will provide us the opportunity to interact positively amongst ourselves in order to facilitate the exchange of ideas and experiences that will culminate into the identification of priorities which shall form the fulcrum of the legislative agenda to be pursued by each chamber of the 10th National Assembly. It is hoped that the retreat shall strengthen the existing bond amongst us and the 10th leadership of the National Assembly so as to provide the most conducive legislative environment for the operation of the 10th National Assembly. I therefore wish us a very productive retreat that shall help to allow the leadership of the both chambers of the National Assembly to gather more skills, expertise, and the wherewithal to provide necessary leadership that shall propel the 10th National Assembly to a greater height.
This is what the Nigerian people expect from us, and we will deliver by the grace of God. From what I can see, I believe this is perhaps the first time the leadership of the National Assembly will organize a retreat for the leadership in this particular format. It is indeed for me an indication that the 10th Assembly, and excuse me, my partner will, in the 9th Assembly, Senator Lawa will excuse me for saying this, it is an indication, quite honestly, that the 10th Assembly will be better than the 9th. Just as the 9th Assembly was better than the 8th. Now, this for me is as should be for us to have progressivism and developmental strides. So I commend the leadership for that. Now, as this retreat has been explicitly organized for legislators, I hope that by the time we are done, we will have considered ideas and come up with actionable recommendations that will serve not only to improve the legislature, but also indeed the executive arm of government. I especially hope that we will come out of this retreat conscious of the continued need to ensure that in designing policies and proposing legislation, we keep sight of the absolute necessity of ensuring alignment between the legislative objectives and the executive imperatives, as is necessary to ensure the smooth operation of the federal government.
This is particularly important as most committees chairmen are new, and even more so for the membership of these committees. To demonstrate our commitment to ensure an efficient and vibrant House, we created committees on monitoring and evaluation. The first committee on monitoring and evaluation will supervise the implementation of the legislative agenda of the House, which is an internal mechanism of making sure that the agenda is meticulously followed. The second monitoring and evaluation committee, which is responsible for monitoring the performance of our standing committees, will essentially oversight activities to ensure timely reports and compliance to the rules and standards of our legislative practice. I'm therefore very pleased for the opportunity offered by this retreat to reflect and engage with colleagues on how we can collectively, as the legislature, contribute to the attainment of the 8-point agenda of our dear President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as expressed in the Renewed Hope agenda. I'm happy that the leadership of the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies has carefully chosen topics that include agenda setting for the 10th National Assembly. These perspectives are vital as they reinforce the need for the 10th National Assembly to operate as one legislature, drawing its initiatives from a central perspective for the 10th National Assembly and not as a separate entities in that regard. My dear colleagues, while the principles of checks and balance and separation of powers require the legislature to be independent, the task of national development requires that the three arms of government be in symphony to ensure this administration delivers on its promises on national development. I feel excited to see that topics such as legislative, executive, and judicial relations have also been captured in this retreat.
The enormity of the responsibility bestowed on our shoulders by the global community. 1 out of every black person you see in the world today is a Nigerian. So as we are seated here, we do not take it for granted. The kind of confidence reposed in us by the Nigerian electorate to give us the opportunity to steer the ship of state. I'm aware that after this leadership retreat, the Senate, I will discuss with the Speaker later, we have intention in the month of October to also undertake a major retreat for all the senators of the 10 Senates. I know the House of Representatives will plan their own, but because of the number, we have to look at the location. If you think that this transformation you are seeing, driving all the way from the airport to this place without any pothole, sitting in a very comfortable environment that used to be a prison, is a beautiful location for the transformation you intend to bring to Nigeria, then bring the next retreat to Akwa Ibom State, and we shall be happy to welcome you. We will not wait for Nigerians to ask, where is the National Assembly? We are very poised to undertake our oversight functions. We are poised to check the actions of the executive. We are poised to check the legislations that were made in the past. So that when the judiciary makes pronouncements, Nigerians will not ask, where is the Piccolo? Where is the National Assembly that ought to make amendment to these acts? Where is the National Assembly that ought to oversight that minister that could have taken this kind of action? Our assurance to you all is that the Piccolo, under our leadership, myself and my brother, Tajuddin Abbas, will definitely do his part by blowing the trumpet.
The Ninth National Assembly never treated the legislature as just a debate club, but rather a distinguished institution with a more profound mission. As ambassadors of the nation's diverse interests, we didn't convene in Abuja to engage in vocal contests. Our purpose was to discover unity in our differences. Our presence was to safeguard the interests of our constituents by articulating their wishes and providing them with staunch advocacy. Our ultimate goal was to secure their recognition and representation within the executive branch. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the National Assembly is a complete spectrum of human experience. This is why you will witness eloquent testimonies of your colleagues in defense of reason. This is why you will witness profound debates that will dismantle your age-long assumptions. But in the end, you will realize that we are all bound by our fidelity to the ideals of democracy. Today I stand before you, burdened with an additional responsibility, having been entrusted with the honor of serving as the Vice President of our beloved nation. Although we may no longer share the same chamber, our fraternal bond remains unbreakable, just as our commitment to safeguarding democracy persists. It is this sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, this shared sense of purpose, that has enabled us to navigate the turbulent seas of governance with unwavering resilience and unwavering determination.
In compliance with global best practice standard, I say to His Excellency the Vice President for his time and attention, to the President of the Senate and the Speaker who considered it necessary to put this capacity building program together, to the elders and leaders of our institution, the National Assembly, the former presiding officers from both chambers, to the former heads of bureaucracies of the National Assembly who are here in their large number, as well as the current members of the bureaucracy of the National Assembly, to our development partners, and of course to all critical stakeholders, including former and serving members of the National Assembly, to the leadership of NILDS, and all those who have come here to teach us and enhance our capacity. On behalf of the principal officers, I say thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
On Monday, Professor Abubakar Suleiman, the Director General of the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, and several state houses of assembly speakers embarked on a working visit to the European Parliament, the Belgian Parliament, and the German Bundestag. This visit was organized by Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. During their exchange of experience visits to Berlin and Brussels, Professor Abubakar Suleiman, Director General of NILDS, and several state houses of assembly speakers engaged in discussions with Barry Andrews, the MEP Chief Observer of the EU Election Observation Mission to Nigeria. During their exchange of experience trip to Belgium, Professor Abubakar Suleiman, the Director General of NILDS, and a group of state houses of assembly speakers made a special visit to His Excellency Obin Arnault, who serves as the Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to the Kingdom of Belgium. The experience-sharing visit by Professor Abubakar Suleiman, the DG of NILDS, and several state houses of assembly speakers organized by Konrad Adenauer's think tank progressed as they held a meeting with Dr. Stefan Friedrich, the head of the Department of Sub-Saharan Africa at KAS, Berlin. Likewise, on Wednesday, the experience-sharing visit by Professor Abubakar Suleiman, DG of NILDS, and several state houses of assembly speakers organized by Konrad Adenauer's think tank progressed as they held a meeting with Dr. Stefan Friedrich, the head of the Department for Sub-Saharan Africa at KAS, Berlin. The task of the leaders is to get their people from where they are to where they've not been. How do we hold our leaders accountable in the business of lawmaking and representation?
The mandate that you have given to us is not abused in any way.
The primary purpose of government is to ensure the welfare and security of the Nigerian people.
The constituency project had noble intentions, and they still remain the most veritable tool.
Do they really know their representatives at the states and national assemblies?
Our people, they don't have water, they are suffering. They only drink water from where rain fall.
For the current one, the 10th assembly, I don't really know who is in charge.
From the mountaintops to the deepest valleys, we're ready to go an extra mile just to show Nigerian your constituency project. Know your representative with Maria, bridging the visible gap. Thank you for being a part of the program this week on Know Your Representative with Maria. For missed episodes, you can catch up on our YouTube page, Mabase TV. Until I come your way again next week for another interesting edition, I am Maria Olasheinde. Stay blessed and God bless Nigeria.